Hello guys and welcome back to the HalfTimeCuppa Podcast with myself, IJ011, and my co-host Charlie Pumfrey, aka Pumfrey on Twitch. How you doing, Charlie?
I'm very good, IJ. That was a lovely intro.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting good at this. Today we're joined by a wonderful guest who goes by the name of Jake Maxwell, or as most people know him, Aberrant FC. How you doing, Jake?
I'm good, mate. Thank you for having me on.
That's all good, mate. All good. Charlie, do you want to introduce him?
Yeah, so this is Aberrant FC. I'd say, what would you say, Jay? I'd say you're fairly new to the Twitch scene. I mean, we had Josh on as our episode 1, the pilot episode, and he said he's been going for about, I think you've been going just shorter than Josh, haven't you?
A couple of, like a week or two shorter than Josh, yeah.
Okay, and then you've also got your YouTube channel as well, which will all be down in the description below, or if you're watching this on the website, it should be down up in the article. I'm pointing up and down as if you can see me. But, too used to being on camera. So, Jake, what football team do you support? We'll start with that. We'll start with that question.
Yeah, I'm a Newcastle United fan.
Ooh. Give us a bit of a background, Jake. When did you sort of get into Newcastle? How did you get into supporting Newcastle? How did that sort of happen?
Well, for a lot of people, I'd say it's a family connection. My dad was a Newcastle supporter through the 80s and 90s. And then that sort of got ingrained in my family. All of my sort of siblings are Newcastle United fans. Rest of the family are all Manchester United, but in my household, it's all Newcastle United. I'm so much so a Newcastle fan that I came out of the hospital in my first Newcastle kit when I was born. So
amazing.
Yeah, it goes quite far
That's
back.
Incredible.
No accusations of bandwagon there, then.
No. And to continue it, my little sister's middle name is Shearer.
No way.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I know a guy who, his brother, he's called Stephen, and they're such a hardcore Liverpool fans, and it's Stephen Gerrard Bailey.
Yeah. My younger brother was nearly called Gerrard. Just simply Gerrard, and I was like, that. I would have loved it. It would have been amazing. I'm not a Liverpool fan, but just the idea of him being called Gerrard's amazing.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting, Jake. So you're a Newcastle fan. So we'll jump straight to Newcastle. I think that's probably a good place to start. So how do you find, obviously, the situation? We can touch on the takeover, but I think if we can talk probably a little bit more about how Newcastle have done on the pitch this season, then we can lead into the off-the-field shenanigans that seem to be going on at the moment. How do you think Steve Bruce has done in his first season in charge?
Well, I think I'll be pretty honest with how I think Steve Bruce has done. He has taken the idea of what Rafa done in the previous season and sort of went, okay, we're only going to do the defensive bit, and we will pass the ball to Alan St. Maximin or Almiron and get them to run, and something will happen at the end. That's very much how we've played.
It's a confusing one with Steve Bruce. I never know whether the Newcastle fans love him or hate him. Isn't it because he was manager at like Sunderland?
Yeah,
I don't know.
The relationship with Bruce. So Bruce was a local-born Newcastle lad. Supported the club his whole life. Very nearly joined Newcastle while he was at Manchester United, and then afterwards when he's retired, he's managed lots of clubs in the northeast like Hull and Sunderland. His time at Sunderland, there was a lot of sort of hate from Newcastle supporters because of that, because he'd always been a Newcastle man apparently, and all of that. And then he's came into this, and I was sceptical. And still am sceptical of him as a manager. Some fans think, no, he's done a fantastic job. We're actually doing better than what we did with Rafa and things like that. But I think if you look at our statistics, if you look at our expected goals, we're scoring so many more expected goals than what we should be per game. And that's probably down to luck. It's one of the main things. But you can't complain really too much in that we've beaten big teams. We've got great results against big teams and stuff. So it's just, where do we go now is sort of the issue. Yeah.
Would you, talking about the goals, would you obviously spend Mike Ashley deciding to actually go and spend some money for first time in what seems like an eternity, and going to go and get Joe Linton? Do you think that was a decent signing, or has he been an absolute flop?
The problem with Joe Linton, this is not a slight on his footballing ability, because I've seen him play good football. When he played in Austria, he scored goals. When he played in Germany, he scored goals. Not as a striker, though. He was very much a number 10 or a number 7, playing off a striker or out on the left-hand side, or maybe in a front 2. He really, really isn't an out-and-out striker. And when you're playing him as one, trying to make him a target man, trying to make him a Rondon 2.0, I just don't think he's got that in his game. I just don't. And so it's been a waste. It was a signing backed off. He was sort of recommended by an agent who we've worked with before for players like Johan Kabay. His agent worked with him at this point, and so there was probably some sort of connection there. So it was a bit of a strange one. I don't think he's worked out well, and I think he'd struggle to regain any sort of reputation with the club now.
Yeah. Well, also, another confusing one, I'd say, is Andy Carroll. As a Newcastle fan, what would you say on that with him returning back to St James's Park?
It was a PR stunt, I'd say, pretty purely.
Well, yeah, that's really interesting. And so, if we're talking there, where would you go from here? We got to look at the elephant in the room, the Saudi Arabian elephant in the room. As far as it comes to the takeover, do you think it's going to be a good thing for the club? Obviously, the money will be fantastic, but there are issues that surround that takeover. Are you in favour? Are you against? Are you kind of waiting to see? Where do you sort of sit with it?
Well, I think a lot of people are probably in a similar boat to me, that the one thing we want is just to not be Mike Ashley. Like, that is the main problem. Since he took over from the Shepherds and the Halls, after we had such good success in the Champions League and Europe in general, and we were pushing for that top 4 regularly, Ashley's came in and turned it into an asset-stripping game, put his logos everywhere, renamed the stadium. The stadium is still technically not called St James's Park. It's a sponsorship deal that calls it St James's Park.
Really?
Via Wonga and our current sponsorship, Fun 88. It's not, the stadium rights are owned by our sponsors. So it's a strange one. And
do you think on the Mike Ashley kind of point that, you know, this summer he's actually put a bit of money in it, buying Joelinton, going out and getting some other players like St Maximan? Do you think that that's kind of helped his reputation, or is it just long gone now?
No, because the money wasn't anything to do. None of the money ever came out of his pocket. It was all club funds. It was never money that belonged to Mike Ashley. It was money that belonged to the club from from getting promoted, from parachute payments, from things like that. TV money. None of it was Mike Ashley's money. It was money that if it wasn't spent, he would have just taken or would have been used elsewhere. So I don't think any Newcastle fan would say he saved face by signing these players. And because the main thing that the problem is that they signed the wrong players.
Yeah.
If they'd have signed the right players, if we'd have signed a player, if we were going to sign a striker, right, why didn't we just get Rondon in for another year or two? I know he's older. I know he's got no resale value, but he scored goals. He pretty much kept us in the league on his own. Or we could have went after someone else with a bit more technical ability, I think is the thing.
I think that's fair enough. I think the sort of overarching of what I've taken from it, obviously this isn't necessarily my opinion on it, but it seemed like Newcastle bought assets last summer rather than bringing in players for the team.
Yeah, they were hoping for resale value.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's not even just resale value of the players themselves. When you can put assets that are worth £40 million onto a balance sheet, if you've got potential new owners coming in, it puts the price of the club up. That's what
absolutely.
Seems to be the case with Amanda Staveley and her consortium, let's say.
Yeah. Well, she was involved in the previous takeover that failed, but this time she's the figurehead of her PCP group, and they'll do the running of the football club. A lot of people think, oh, well, you're going to see Mohammed bin Salman in the stands at St James's Park. That'll never happen. He might do it once.
First
as
game.
A PR stunt. Yeah, something like that.
Maybe in the Champions League final.
maybe. But yeah, I think it's got to be a Staveley and Reuben Brothers sort of fronted takeover with the PIF fund in the background. And as for the football club, as a footballing club, it's a good move. On the international stage, it's could be seen as sports washing. It probably is sports washing.
Yeah.
I think it would be hard to call it anything but.
Yeah.
And I think Newcastle fans, a lot of them, there's probably a 50-50 split of some people who are just unbelievably excited at the idea of us having all this money and we can go out and sign players. Today we've been linked with Kai Havertz, which is an insane name to even be considered, especially in the past 10 years at Newcastle. And then there's the other half that probably I'm on, is that we've been to almost this stage 5 or 6 times before with different owners, and we still don't really believe it's going to happen. It's like there'll be something that stops. It's been delay after delay after delay. You've just got to hope that something ticks it over and it goes through. And the main thing is, as I said previously, it's that it's not Mike Ashley. It's not that it's Saudi Arabia. It's that it's not Mike Ashley.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. I think that's brought them probably a little bit more good faith to start with than some clubs would have in that situation.
Yes, definitely, 100%.
Well, that's really interesting, Jake. I think your opinion there makes a lot of sense. Like you say, you are going to have to wait and see with football and with some of the piracy issues that are also being brought up now potentially with these new owners. But yeah, that's really when it comes to Newcastle. I think that all of that makes a lot of sense. But if, say, for example, we're going to get into the portion in a minute when it comes to Football Manager and the decision making that comes with that. If that money comes in, where would you say that you have to kind of use the Manchester City approach when that money comes in, or if you were given sort of control, the Amanda Staveley role, what are some of the first few steps you would take? I know obviously you're not a football executive.
I wouldn't even look at players for the first couple of months. That'll be my absolute lowest priority at the minute. I know that obviously they will go and sign a big player. They'll do what City did with Robinho. They'll find someone. They'll find a name that they can throw in. That could be Kai Havertz. It could be anyone. It really, really could be anyone. We don't have a clue who they're talking to. Ciro Immobile has been brought up to be the new number 9. That sort of player.
Yeah.
But what I want to see as a Newcastle United fan, I'm sat here in a black and white shirt right now. This is how I spend my days. I want to see us go and spend £200 million on new training facilities. Take the Liverpool approach. Get a manager who's got this vision like Klopp does at Liverpool. Someone like that, maybe a Pochettino. If you've watched my latest video on the YouTube channel, maybe Julian Nagelsmann. Good little segue. Like the Julian Nagelsmann approach, build up your youth facilities first. Get the conveyor belt rolling. Maybe go to Barcelona. There's a La Masia graduate who's not quite pushing the first team. Okay, bring him in. Get him involved. Go to Bayern Munich. There's a kid who, he might be going off to another team like at Dortmund. Maybe we poach him and start building up this under-21 squad that none of them might ever make first team, but it turns us from a Category 3 team that we currently are, which is a Premier League team, is atrocious. Move us up to that Category 1 so that our youth team can attract better players and that our facilities are going to be better so that when we bring a player to the youth, to the ground to maybe try and sell the club to them or an agent, that they're not walking around and saying that our hydrotherapy facilities are wheelie bins with water in.
That makes a lot of sense.
There's a very famous photo of Shola Amiobi and Musa Sissoko sat in wheelie bins. And it's just, that's what needs to be done first. The stadium's decrepit. It's an amazing stadium, but it needs some love. It hasn't had any. Needs them signs gone. Needs just work. And then we worry about the players. I think personally, ideal person to bring in, this would give a bit of love from the American market. Go off and get Joseph Martinez from Atalanta. He's got that link with Almiron. He's a really good player on his own. He's a finisher. Someone like that who's a little bit of a brand in the States, bring them over, then you've got interest from over there. You maybe look in Spain, you find a big player from Spain, maybe even an international, and do things like that. Bring a couple of names in first, and then build a squad around it. We've got good backbone. We've just got a lot of championship players at the minute as well.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like it's almost a structural reshape that is needed there. Almost a rebrand of the club from an internal perspective.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Just completely sort of a ripping out of the old carpet, let's say.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But that makes a lot of sense. I think it's probably... I guess we've probably covered quite a lot there. We've covered a lot of ground on Newcastle. That was good. But moving on, though, Jake, to probably the main crux of why you're here today. The game we all love and adore. The greatest football game out there. I said it in the first episode. I'll say it again.
I'd agree.
the greatest football game available at quite a reasonable price. Not an advert, not
As
sponsored.
as I tried to say in the last pod.
Yeah. So, but basically, yeah, Football Manager, Jake. When did you get into it? What was your first game? What's your first memories of the game? I mean, some of my first memories aren't even playing the game; it's seeing other people play it. What's your sort of background? Give us your origin story of Football Manager.
Yeah, so my origin, I'll have to sort of go a little bit back. So my first ever thing that I played Football Manager on is probably different to most people. I started on a PSP.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Josh has exactly the same. Josh was PSP as well.
Everyone's saying this. I feel a little left out now.
But sorry, go ahead,
I
Jake.
started with Football Manager handheld, 2008 is what I start with. But the reason I got it was because I went to what was then Game Station, which is now Game, and I bought 5 games for £5 on there. I got World Star Soccer, Football Manager, and 3 other games that I can't remember because there weren't any.
Football Manager for £1.
Yeah, for £1. Yeah, this was 2008. It was no one was buying the PSP was already dying very quickly. Games were being sold for nothing. Game Station was also shutting down, so the games were incredibly cheap. I got that. I got home. I played that World Star Soccer a lot. You could play as Pele and things like that in it. It was great. But then I sat down with Football Manager, loaded up a Newcastle save, and from that day onwards, I probably spent about 4 hours every day after school for the next 3 years playing Football Manager.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I just went from there. And there was some great young players in the Newcastle squad then, mainly Haris Vukic was the main one, the Slovenian attacking midfielder. He was incredible in that game. If I went to Real Madrid, I would buy him at Real Madrid at the start of the save for 250,000, and he'd be a first teamer by the time he was 19. It's just how I used to play that game, and that sort of went from there. And then I got a laptop, got FM12, and then since then played every single title since. So yeah, it's been a long journey.
Yeah, it's a long old journey, definitely. You've spoken there about your memories, obviously, of certain players, and those. I guess we all have those iconic players that really aren't iconic to any other person on the planet, but will be a name that can be said, and you'll be like, "Oh, I instantly know who that is," and everything about that person.
Yeah.
So coming through, what would you? I mean, we'll change order a little bit from what we went through in the first episode. Which one would you say? Which FM would you say you have the greatest sort of affiliation with, let's say? Because I think the best one is probably usually the one you have the best affiliation with.
Yeah, so I would probably say FM17, which might be a controversial opinion because a lot of people didn't like that one. Or there was certain issues with it. And the reason for it is that I had an incredible network save with a friend of mine, Jack. We played a save. I was Hoffenheim, and he was Cologne or Köln, depending on where you are in the world. And in that save, I played a 3-7-0 strikerless system, and I won everything, absolutely everything, within 3 seasons with them.
Wow.
It just blew me away. Jack got sacked there and went to AC Milan, and this little hatred of AC Milan that my channel's developed probably started there. And yeah, it sort of came from that. And FM17, which was, again, it was a little bit controversial for just not being as detailed in a lot of places. A lot of people thought it had stepped down from 16 and 15, especially people loved 15.
Yeah.
That was one of the sort of iconic games of the Football Manager era. And 17 wasn't really that. And then I think they made a big step up for 18 personally. But yeah, 17 probably has that for me, the biggest sort of connotations. Whenever I think of the game, I think of that save. Yeah, it was fantastic.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like I say, the one that you tend to have the best story with, and that sounds like a fantastic story. Interesting that you speak about a network save there. I think a lot of people would have the same experiences with it, let's say, even though I think it's mightily underrated. And we'll get to where multiplayer Football Manager is going to go in the next few years, because I think we had this conversation with Josh yesterday, and I think I'd love to get your perspective on it as well in a little while. But when it comes to sort of Football Manager 2020 then, how have you found it? Have you enjoyed it? Are you seeing areas that need to be improved? What's been sort of your impression of the game so far?
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I think a lot of people had gripes with the match engine at the start. As is, I wouldn't say is often the case, but can be the case, especially in beta. the one-on-ones and the goalkeepers and set pieces have been sort of the focus of this year's match engine, I'd say. And from my point of view, once they'd done the initial patch, I think it was in November sort of time, December, they put that very first patch out. Since then, I think the game has been incredibly solid. Maybe we didn't all discover how good set pieces were until maybe quite recently. But no, I've enjoyed the game itself. I've obviously sort of gained a lot from it with the whole Twitch thing and YouTube and stuff. But as a game, I think it's very, very good. I think the main area of improvement is probably how the 3D match engine represents the 2D occurrences.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly hard to do. That is incredibly hard to do. And I understand that underneath the hood, Football Manager is so complicated and that it is very difficult to do that. So that would be the only thing I would like to see. I think overall the game is fantastic in general. And I hope it continues and improves next year. They always surprise us with some additions every year. So you never know. I'm always open to whatever they do, really. I'm not one who gets annoyed when they add something or take something away. I like to see why they do it.
Josh said in the last episode about if in FM21, if they just didn't change anything, say new game, updated transfers, he'd just buy that, play that the same, because he loves this game so much. Would you be the same?
Yeah, I would buy if they've just rehashed it, reskinned it, whatever. I would buy it again. I want to support the devs because they do a lot of good work. They do a lot of good things for the community in general. They're very kind. They're very interactive with their community and things. Like, I buy the editor every year, right? And most of the time, never use it because I'd like to give them that extra £4 or £5 because I will have bought the game, pre-ordered it from Steam. I don't do it via a third-party site because you want to give them as much of the cut as you can. And things like that. And yeah, I've always been like that with Football Manager. I'd buy it again. Obviously, you want to see improvements. You want to see changes. You don't want them to take a FIFA approach and literally rehash every game. And that is coming from someone who was I'll say in quotation marks, semi-professional FIFA player back in 15, playing in tournaments and stuff. Football Manager just has something different and they do it every year. It somehow creates stories whenever you play it. And yeah, I'd buy it again. I will be pre-ordering it the day the pre-order's announced, I'll be honest. And I'll play the beta. The beta will be streamed, YouTubed, whatever. So yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Such a generous guy, Jake.
So Jake, there, you're talking about creating stories, and I feel like that's a lovely little segue into creating in general and being a creator. How have you found, obviously, this is obviously YouTube and Twitch coming into it now. How have you found sort of the step from just playing the game to having to deliver it in a certain way? Has the game been helpful in that, in terms of how you present it? How have you just found creating for the game?
I've found it probably the most fun I've had in Football Manager, probably ever. It has been a real experience. You play the game in a very different way. We were talking about this on stream with some people in chat. They were saying, how do you end up playing? I said that I play the game a lot more in terms of hours per season offline than I do when I'm streaming. And he's like, how's that possible? You've got to talk and everything. Because when you're streaming, I find you want to get through things a lot quicker. You don't go into every menu. You don't click through all the options. You don't manually do your training. You don't do every press conference. Whereas on my own, I sit and do every little bit. I'm a super micromanager when it comes to Football Manager offline. For the new YouTube stuff, I'll be micromanaging it to hell. That's just how I play the game. But for Twitch, especially, I feel like you want to keep moving because you don't want to lose your audience because they're bored and things like that. So I found it really, really good. I think the game helps with its insane ability to create stories. My AEK save, I think, was unbelievable for that. Especially with how the two European Cup finals sort of went, and
that's really interesting.
I think it's really been good.
I mean, you've mentioned AEK there. Can you give us a bit more of a doubt for the people that are listening that haven't maybe seen the AEK save? Give us the kind of let's say condensed, because obviously I don't know how did it end up being about 10 seasons in the end, 11,
12
12
in the end.
Was it 12 seasons in the end?
Yeah. So
Research
yeah,
that.
AEK Athens, a team that are a little bit controversial in real life for lots of different reasons that I'm not going to go into now. But it's a team that I sort of grew up supporting, which might sound strange as an Englishman, but that comes from my love of the nation of Greece and the place itself mainly as a holiday tourist destination. But yeah, AEK, decided with them because of links I've had with them in the past. And so we started off with the goal of winning the Champions League, like most European saves start with. And the idea was to build the nation up with it, which we quite successfully did, I would say. And
yeah,
we got to, so very early on, by season 5, we got to a Europa League Cup final where we played AC Milan. We had torrid amounts of injuries. We had to play an 18-year-old goalkeeper, Mitchelson, in goal on the day. It was his professional debut for us, that sort of thing. That's the levels of injuries we had. And we only lost 1-0 on the night to a team that had came runners-up in a Champions League the season before. So we done, in my opinion, quite well then. And then so after that, we kept winning the leagues. We won every league, every cup pretty much, other than a couple that I just sort of, I got knocked out early or whatever by playing a rotated side and things like that. But we always won the league, apart from one season where Olympiacos became the greatest team known to man for 1 year. And yeah, and then it got to the point where I was about to give up with the save. I was like, I've had enough. We're not going to win it. This was season 10. I was like, we just lost 3 Champions League semi-finals in a row, 2 of them to Manchester United. And I just had enough. And then I done another stream. I was like, no, I can't give up. And then after that, we had a very, very late stream where me and Pumpster in here, and also Antonio Governo 04 sat until 3 a.m. building a tactic, which I hope you link down below just for people to be able to reference it. Just see just an image or something. That we built this incredible isometric 4-2-3-1. Effectively, it was a lopsided 4-2-3-1, and in the first 4 months of the save, we didn't concede a single goal since we built that season. We got to January the 3rd before we conceded a goal in a normal European calendar season, including we beat Juventus 4-0 twice and things like that. And we won the league at a canter. And we had that amazing game at Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals where Juan scored probably the best goal I've ever seen in Football Manager.
Where one of your emotes came to life.
Yeah, exactly. One of the emotes, the "Oh My Days" emote and things like that. And then the semi-final, we somehow scraped through that, and then the final, I think, was we just dominated it. We dominated the final against, of course, AC Milan, but before it, we had injuries. And who played in goal? The once 18-year-old Mitchelson, who had to play in that game. We bought him back at the start of the season for 325k to be our third choice keeper. And he had to play in that final. And he had one trait that I think basically won us that game. And that was relishes big matches. And he made 2 of the most unreal stops I've ever seen in that final. We won the game 2-0. And I very nearly cried on stream.
Richly
What
deserved.
a story.
Richly deserved.
What a story.
It was absolutely, there was layers to it in every level. There was former players in the opposition team and everything. It was just absolutely absurd, but we did it, and it was some save.
Yeah, that definitely. I mean, I don't know if the VODs are still up on your channel, but if people could go back and rewatch it, it would be one of the greatest. Like, I don't know how many hours you ended up putting in on stream on that one.
130, I think it was.
Wow.
That's probably like how much I played in the last FM.
Well,
Yeah,
this
I
is
know.
it. Some people only play the game for that long, but to be able to provide people content for that long, and good content as it is, obviously, if you are here and you aren't already, across over at Jake's stream, his links will be down below. Get over there. But the stories, I think the story that was created, and I think that you honestly had a part to play, almost the key role to play, was it felt like a real football narrative. It was the sort of stories that you could feel in a Champions League final that was like, your keeper gets injured, or like Chelsea losing John Terry to a suspension before. Like, it's the sort of things where Football Manager seems to be very good at creating those and allowing people to create those stories on players.
Yeah, and I think one thing that really helped is that in both of those, in 2 of the semi-finals before, the 2 against Manchester United, our wonder kid, our Mr. AEK of the save after Mantelos retired, Vardan, had turned himself into an enemy of the club somehow by just failing to show up. And Vardan is now referenced in your stream as well, Pumpster.
Yes, yeah.
With the regen and stuff. But he's the single best player I've ever used in a game until he played in a semi-final or above. As soon as he didn't have hate speak matches, didn't have inconsistency or anything like that, he was perfect. He was the perfect box-to-box midfielder. Yet he just could not go 90 minutes in a game without getting sent off, missing penalties, or dropping a 6.1 in those games.
That's mental.
But then he lifted the trophy. I subbed off our captain on the day while he was vice-captain, Erling Goretzka, which is a reference to both of you in here.
Let's not talk about that.
Those are tales for another day. Yeah,
those are tales for another day. But yeah, we took him off so Vardan would lift the trophy, and he did. And God, now I revere it. I love Vardan now after the save. Like I hated him. I genuinely had this hatred for this regen in Football Manager that I signed at 16, and he played 10 years at the club. He played nearly every single game he was physically available for 10 years. Unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely mad.
You also created a very well-known tactic now in this kind of community that we have that many people are using. Do you want to just explain that?
Yeah, so it's known as the bus. It's a tactic that... So I can't take 100% credit. It's an alternation on a tactic that was from the FM base forums, but all I done is made all of the roles way more defensive. Way more defensive. Because the original tactic was designed to hit teams on the break. I decided, no, we're not going to hit teams on the break. We're just going to sit as a block, because I noticed it was really, really good defensively anyway, but I was like, if we make it even more compact, more narrow, use the pressing forwards to absolutely murder the central midfielders in the team by sticking them on support, it could really, really destroy teams. And it's probably been used in 5 or 6 different streams now by different people.
Yeah, I've used it.
People, yeah.
So,
I tried to recreate it, but nothing can recreate the bus.
It's very specific. The tactics work in such a specific way. When you watch it, you should, if anyone has it or has access to it, it's available in my Discord. If you watch it on the 3D match engine or even on the 2D match engine from an above sort of perspective, it looks like it should not work. It really, really doesn't. I'd say you're like, there is so much space. There is so much space everywhere. It's like in the center of the park, there's gaps between the defenders, there's gaps between the fullbacks. But what it's designed for, it's not really designed to be an off-the-ball tactic. It's designed to be the worst tiki-taka system you've ever seen. It's tiki-taka in your own third. You'll have 75% possession every single game, because all that happens is your right mid, centre mid, and right back pass the ball between themselves for about 90 minutes. That's just what it's designed to do. And for some reason, it scores goals every time I use it. I put it on and I'm like, we'll try and hold 1-0, and then we score from open play.
Yeah, I've had that.
It blows me away every time.
We spoke with Josh last episode about game-breaking tactics. What are your opinions on that? Obviously, the bus is incredible, but would you call it a game-breaking tactic?
In a way, yes, because the reason why it works is because it doesn't really let the AI do anything.
Yeah.
They just can't quite work it out. My opinion on game-breaking tactics is, if you discover it, use it, right? If you've made it, a bit like the Omni tactic, it wasn't game-breaking, but it certainly helped our players a lot, and it's helped my new save a lot as well.
Yeah,
and I'd say, as long as you're not just downloading one and plugging it in just to win stuff, then you're probably not going to have as much enjoyment out of it that way. But if you discover a game-breaking tactic, I think that's very different. I think you get more enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
In a way, it's a difficult one, because obviously this then goes into the argument: should you use downloaded tactics? I'm all for downloaded tactics. I think if you download a tactic and plug it in, it's not always going to work. Then the fun bit is like, right, what is this tactic doing, and how do I change it? And I think that's the best way to learn how tactics work in Football Manager. I really do. Because
Yeah,
you might think, I'll plug a 4-4-2 in, right? I'm doing non-league. I'm going to use a 4-4-2, wingers, super wide. Oh, wait, I just concede loads of goals through the middle, right? You then download someone else's 4-4-2. You plug that in. For some reason, it works. You can compare them systems, and then you see, oh, I'm conceding goals out wide. I'll maybe drop the wingers onto support. Now we're more solid. And things like that. Like, it lets you learn. I don't think they're a thing that shouldn't be allowed. I think they're a really, really good way to help people get experience in the game. I still use the downloaded tactic as recently as FM18 as my main tactic, where I tweaked it.
Yeah.
So I don't see much of a problem in it personally.
Yeah, personally, I don't use downloaded tactics whatsoever. I just create my own, like an old classic man. But yeah, as you say, it's very opinionated. People, you do what you want when you play an FM, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a video game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jake, there, you're speaking about AEK, and then you said as well, you've now moved on to something new, something very new. There's not a lot of overlap between those two saves. But yeah, give us a bit of the lowdown. What are you doing at the moment on Twitch, on YouTube? If you want to go with either of those.
Yeah, we'll start with Twitch because the second save came first on there. We have Club Atlético Villa San Carlos, a third division at the time, Argentinian side, who have very little history in a men's team. Their women's team is one of the top Argentinian football teams for the women's category. Men's team, on the other side, absolutely not. They are as amateur as it gets. And they've struggled. They've struggled to sort of get themselves into that second division so they can sort of make themselves a proper professional team, which we have now done in the save. But we had a little twist. As we mentioned earlier, I'm a Newcastle United fan. So we decided, with the help of Soya Cheese String from my chat, we decided that, we want a bit of a twist on this. So we added Fabrizio Colaccini and Jonas Gutierrez as player coaches. Colaccini being the assistant and Gutierrez being effectively a head coach. And they were designed to sort of only be useful for the first season. They were not good enough in the second season to really help us out that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went with that. We then got back-to-back promotions into the top flight. Then in that first season in the top flight, we finished 8th, which is, in my opinion, an incredible feat out of 22 teams, especially if you look through the names in the Argentinian top division. Absolutely. You will have heard of almost all of them. It's that kind of league. Every single team is fantastic, and the teams that win the league are different every year, other than maybe your top 3 classic teams of Vélez, Boca, and River. It's now starting to change in real life. San Lorenzo are a bit of a force now, but there's so many other teams. And yeah, the new season has gone ridiculously well. Actually, slightly too well, because it's ruining my plans a little bit.
You have to come up with a new save very soon.
It's a little bit of a problem because we won the Copa Argentina, which gets you qualification for the Copa Libertadores, the Champions League equivalent in South America, which is absolutely mad. The fact we won that, we won it on penalties against Talares, it was absolutely unbelievable. And Talares themselves, they were the league winners that year. They were the best team in the league. Unbelievable side. And then, all right, we got drawn into our group, and I was like, oh, we've got a tough group. We've got Corinthians, the champions of Chile, I forget their name, and Blooming, a team from Bolivia. And we won 5 out of the 6 and drew 1 in that group. Mental, we absolutely smashed it. We then got drawn in the second round against Carrizo. We walked past them without any real problem. We then got Boca Juniors, who we turned down a 3-1 deficit against in the second leg when we won 3-0. And now, after the first leg against Flamengo, we beat Flamengo, who are probably Brazil's best team in Football Manager especially. Beat them 3-1 at the Maracanã.
Wow.
So we've got the second leg to come on the day of recording this.
Yeah, I was like, as of recording, you might have lost the second leg, but
yeah, we never know. We never know what will happen, but I'm sure you could find the VOD for later on.
It'll be. I'm sure it'll be evident somewhere.
But yeah, it's gone a bit too well. We're 3-1 up in the first leg. That's 3 away goals as well. So we've got the home leg to come. That'll come tonight. And then if we do get through, we'll have a final. And I believe the likelihood is that we'd be playing Vélez, who are currently top of the Argentinian league. So yeah, it's gone a bit mad.
if you win this, we don't know, but when this comes out, people will know. Is your plan to go on to Club World Cup or move on to a next save straight away?
Well, that's the sticking point, I think, is that the Club World Cup, the new Club World Cup, where there's a lot more European teams in it, makes it a very difficult prospect for a team like us to win.
Mm.
Yeah.
We have never had more than a transfer budget of more than £300,000 throughout the whole save.
Wow.
Our wage budget is £65,000.
Jeez.
Yeah.
My wage budget at Berries 63, I think.
Yeah, so we're if you look, we are spending 1/15 of what Boca Juniors spend on wages.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And we've managed to get to this point. So if we win the Copa Libertadores, it's a £12 million prize pool. So that will propel us probably enough to probably win the Argentinian league with the sort of resources that we've got, with the young players that we've got scouted. We've got, if I had £10 million to spend on players, I could build an unbelievable team with the players we've got scouted. It's just having the money is the problem.
Yeah. So would it be a case of one attempt at the Club World Cup, or you just winning it and then going, or winning the Copa Libertadores and then going?
I think what I'd like to do at least is give it maybe 2 goes. I think the first time round, we are not going to be anywhere near the level, right? Yeah. We're lucky to have beaten the Brazilian teams this time round. Yeah. We're not better than those. We're probably not going to win the league this year, right?
Yeah.
We're significantly behind Vélez already. I think we're about 6 points behind them, and we're coming up to the halfway point of the season. And we're not really pushing for it. We're pushing to be in the top 4, but we're not pushing to win the league. So it's a bit of a strange time to win it. Because we're not even the biggest team in Argentina. We're not even in the top 10 biggest teams in Argentina. Yet we've somehow got to this point. So I want to give it a go. If we get drawn and we have to play a Liverpool, I have no idea what would happen. I would think we'd
be the case of the bus coming out, right?
it would feel like it would have to be. But I learned something this. I think actually, Pumfrey, you mentioned it in one of the streams that we got promoted, and I was still using an attacking tactic when we first got promoted, using a 4-2-3-1 that we basically copied from AEK.
Yeah,
and we used it, and I was like, "Oh, right, we'll change it up. We'll go to positive or balanced." And we've done that. And then this season, I went, you know what? Actually, we're going to play attacking again, and we've absolutely dominated teams. So it's a bit of a strange one that I look at all of our players and think we're not that good, and then we go out onto the pitch and we beat Boca Juniors 3-0. We beat Flamengo 3-1. We beat a newly promoted side 9-0. Like, that's the sort of levels we're at, right?
Mm.
So it's a strange one. The save's been very interesting. But yeah, I think I think that pretty much covers that save anyway.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it's got an exciting future as well, but it's not.
Yeah, definitely.
There isn't
it's not
a designated
over.
end, I think, as well. It's not a...
Yes, it might continue even if we do another save. It might be something we sort of do in the background.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I mean, and yeah, talking of new saves, I feel like we can appropriately bridge across. I mean, by the time this comes out, the first episode hopefully will have gone live.
Yeah, there could even be 4 or 5 episodes by the time this comes out. It's
very true.
Probably going to be daily. So,
give us the download. Give us a DL on that one.
Yeah, new save, which this, as me mentioning, I'm a Newcastle United fan. This might surprise you who the new save is with. Aston Villa. A team that have a bit of a history with Newcastle United. In fact, when we got relegated in 2009, it was a 2-1 loss to Aston Villa with a Damien Duff own goal that sent us down after Gareth Barry hit a thunderbolt and it bounced off Damien Duff and went in. And yeah, they're a team that they had let's all laugh at Newcastle signs in the crowds and things like that. But that's swept aside. We're not focusing on Newcastle United. They're the enemy now, regardless of my allegiances. We are going with Aston Villa, the villains of Rotterdam, with the goal of repeating the feat of 1982, where Aston Villa won the Champions League in Rotterdam against probably Bayern Munich's golden generation, with players like Rummenigge playing up top, who's one of the greatest centre-forwards football's ever seen. He doesn't really get as much love as he probably should. And yeah, so the goal is win the Champions League again. But the twist is, there's always a twist whenever I do a save. is that we are going to be sticking to 3 different tactics. The 4-4-2 that they used, the 4-3-3 that they used, and the 4-5-1, which is more of a variation on a 4-3-3. It's two inside forwards on attack, is what the 2 wingers will be. So it's more of a wide 4-3-3. So that's the sort of the thing that makes it unique, is that we're going to be sticking to very sort of 70s, 80s style English football, quite direct, quite quick, using fullbacks quite a lot to sort of advance the play. And yeah, it's going to be quite interesting, I think.
Jake, one thing I did love about your little reveal for this YouTube save is the build up you gave it, all the hints in the streams and in the Discord. That made it special for when it came out, mate. So keep that one up.
Yeah, I think you've got to try and build a little bit of hype with these things, haven't you? You can't just throw it out there to the world too early. But yeah, it'll be out there. There should be a few episodes out by now. Hopefully, Jack Grealish and the boys are doing the job at this point. And yeah, it should be quite fun.
Yeah, I mean, we'll all be eagerly watching. By the time it's out, I'm sure I'll watch every episode that would have come with it, and they'll be readily available. Your YouTube will be down below as well. But I think if we're talking a little bit more meta now, talking about Twitch and YouTube itself, how have you found the step into those platforms? And how's your reception been? Are you still enjoying it as much as you did at the beginning? Are you still you seeing a future of doing this?
Yeah, I think I'll start with Twitch, because that's sort of where the sort of explosion has been, I'll call it, because it really has felt like that. So initially, I was doing it just as a let's see what happens, right? Like everyone else was. Let's I've got the setup for it. I bought the setup a couple of years ago. I had to go, but I had an illness and an accident that led to me not doing it. So I came back during quarantine, like everyone else has, and thought, let's start a Twitch channel. Had this first couple of weeks where you get 1 or 2 people popping in, maybe a couple of random follows here and there. And then I got involved with Josh Peach I found his channel while scrolling, we were scrolling down trying to find someone who was using a snowball microphone. We saw that he was using one, clicked on his stream, sat there for 3 hours, used and subbed and all of that. And then it's led to this sort of little connection that we've got. But more on my side, I've had a really, really good reception to it. I think I got, in the first 3 days of having the affiliate, I got over 15 subs.
Wow.
It was a pretty crazy start. The journey to affiliate was great as well. I've had support from other content creators quite a lot. And I think that Twitch as a platform is really, really good for Football Manager right now. I think we've got to give a lot of credit to Dr. Benji and Fox in the Box for the Streamer Showdown.
And
all the other creators. But I think as a creator, there has been the copyright issue that is sort of floating about at the minute. But as a creator, Twitch is very easy for Football Manager. It's very interactive. The game has so many little interactions you can do at any point, so your chat can get involved. Things like renaming regens, them helping you with tactics and things. I think as a creator, Twitch has been really, really good. And my reception, I don't think it really could have went much better for someone who's not got a lot of experience in this field. And also has done I've managed teams that people don't really know that much about as well. So the fact that people have came in and paid attention to a team like AEK, especially AEK, was really, really interesting. And I've been blown away by the support people have given.
Yeah, I think it's been fantastic, mate. And I think the quality of your content has drawn people in. And obviously, if you're here, feel free to go and find it. But yeah, that's really interesting. You spoke there a little bit. We'll jump onto it now. I think that's probably the best place to crack straight to. Obviously, the Stream Showdown, we had the most recent edition of that at the beginning of June. Was it beginning of June?
Yeah,
it was right. First weekend of June, wasn't it? First weekend of June, we had that. First edition of that. Third edition of that. I can remember numbers. Honestly, numbers are beyond me today. The third edition of the Streamer Showdown. How do you think it went? I mean, you can talk in general or how it's progressed.
I think it was probably the best one yet, I'd say. From what I witnessed, I'm someone who was a bit slow to sort of get in on the Streamer Showdown, to start getting into it.
Yes.
But I'll be honest, the the storylines that have been built from the previous ones and what they've done really well, I think, is get the right people in to be part of the group.
Yeah.
Even with the smaller, I'd say smaller guys in inverted commas, they're way bigger than what I am in terms of their streaming. But people like Clates, people like Dupe, they've been really, really good for it. You look at in the initial one with like Second Yellow Card and people like that. They've made a really, really good group of people to come in who all interact really well, and then they've got the right mix of the bigger names. You look at Spencer, who's more of a football/FIFA content creator. You look at James Alcott, obviously from the Premier League YouTube channel and things like that. They bring in their own audience, which then helps Football Manager on its own. I think they've been really, really smart about it. And from what I've seen on Twitter, there's a couple of other big content creators like Nepenthes and Manny who look like they're going to get involved in it very, very soon. So, yeah, it's a really great thing for the community. I think as a content platform, Football Manager multiplayer is something that has been totally ignored, both by the community and probably in a little bit partially from Sports Interactive. It's not something that has changed a lot in the past few years, really. So I'd like to see more of that, and I think now they've got the reason to make it better because this platform is growing. Over 5,000 people watching at peak between all the streams is incredible for Football Manager. Incredible. Yeah. I know other games get more than that on some of their smaller streamers, but for a game like Football Manager it's played by a lot of people, but not content-wise, not consumed by a lot of people. This is a good way for it to grow.
Absolutely, no. Indeed, I think you're spot on. I think if they're, I also what the next question was going to be. When you're talking there about the streamer show, do you reckon there's anything out that you've mentioned some names there, Manny and Zerka, I believe was he said. Nepenthes, sorry, not Zerka. Zerka was a different one who's been mentioned as well.
Yes.
Yeah, many people. Yeah.
Are there any other names that you'd like to see involved? Is there anything else that if you were in Benji's position, obviously I know he takes a lot of ownership over it. Is there any way that you'd look to improve it potentially, or you just sort of keep the same sort of group and just sort of augment it slightly like they have done? Or is there anything that you'd want from it?
I think they've got to add at least one new name every time. And whether that be a big content creator, like I think what they'll probably do is they'll swap out one of the big guys, like Spencer, like James Alcott, and they'll put in a Nepenthes, a Manny, a Zerka, maybe even a KSI, something like there's been lots of talk. Benji said on stream that KSI has been in touch. It's just he's been very busy with album stuff and things recently that he hasn't been able to. But it's something that they're genuinely looking at.
Sorry. Go on, Jake. No, go on, mate.
Yeah, but anyway, I think that the names I'd like to see, I think there's a couple that are really growing quite quickly that should be put in there. I think Omega Luke is one of them. I think he's got to get a shout. His content has been fantastic. It's very community-oriented, and he's a really good personality. I think he'd get on like a house on fire with a lot of the lads in there. And then the other one, the one that we're all close to, Josh Peach, he's got to be in there soon. I think his content is perfect. His style is perfect. He's different to the other guys in a lot of ways that he's not a Football Manager expert. That's not a slight on him. He just hasn't played the game as much as most people for someone in his position.
Yeah.
But I'd really love to see someone like him involved because his community is growing every single day by pretty big numbers. And I think he's the perfect kind of candidate. He's a real personality. He's a really likable character. And I think he'd do fantastically in there personally. Yeah,
we spoke with him last week about promotion, relegation on the Streamer Showdown. Do you think you mentioned swapping out James and Spencer with those big guys? Do you think that would work with them? Just because then you can refresh the faces each series.
I'm not a fan of the idea of the promotion relegation thing. I'll be honest, because I think that forces too many people to have to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want to make it that the reason why I can't commit to this is because I can't come into this and do 6 of them in a row.
Yeah.
Right. You want to make it as easy for content creators as possible to get involved with this, because someone like KSI, I'm going to use KSI as the example because he's the extreme example, right, of the sort of size that they could go for. he's not going to be available every 3 weeks to do Football Manager.
No.
It would have to be a one-off that he organises. So you don't want a promotion relegation with him. I know we could maybe do it with smaller guys. You could make it there, but I think that could cause people to start having... You don't want any drama in Football Manager. There's not been a lot of it. You don't want people going like, oh, this person's used this game-breaking tactic to get themselves promoted so they can get on the big stream.
Yeah.
I think collation of the correct characters is the way to do it, not trying to get people to earn it via Football Manager skill. Because I think if we'd done that, we might not have seen... This isn't a slight on them. This is we might not have seen James Alcott if he had to go through a promotion relegation thing because he's really new to the game. Same with Spencer. They wouldn't get through something like that if they say I would fancy myself against someone like them because I've played thousands of hours of this game. I know what works. Yeah, I could throw in set piece routines that break everything and go from there. They wouldn't know that.
I think that's a really interesting kind of perception on it because, as you say, what makes it great, what makes the Streamer Showdown great isn't how good they are at it. It's the characters that you have in it. I think that's what you said there, Jake, is absolute perfect kind of representation of the Streamer Showdown.
No, I think that's absolutely spot on. And I think that's quite a nice sort of overall look on it when it comes to the Streamer Showdown. Going back to Football Manager then, just in general, obviously we're coming now to what would probably be the end of the cycle when it comes to Football Manager. I know there's probably still a couple of months left in what would be peak time, although the community is showing a mad level of support for most years. I think the fact it's still growing as a community at this point in the cycle of a game could make a lot of difference as to the next one coming out. As for the next one, is there anything that I know you've spoken earlier about what you'd necessarily like to see if you did have the opportunity to put maybe one feature into the game or tweak something that already exists? Where would you be going with that?
I think I'd be going for a little bit more depth in youth development from a slightly earlier age than what the game currently allows.
Yeah.
So the youngest age you can really get without playing around with it, say in England, for example, is I think 15, and they normally turn 16 pretty much straight away. I want to be able to improve the club at like an under 12s level or an under 10s level, that you're looking at being able to improve your facilities, get a coaching staff in, I want to be able to get a member of coaching staff for each level. And if I want to improve, I want control basically of that. I want to be able to say, right, I'm going to put a coach in there that has 20 working with youngsters in my under 12s or whatever, and he's going to focus on them. And then I have, say, my head of youth development has a bit more of an important role in managing those staff. And it's almost like a scouting role. He'd be more like a chief scout in that you would have these youth teams that obviously you wouldn't be able to use any of the players because of their ages, but you'd maybe know a little bit more about them. You'd maybe know 5 years down the line, oh, there's this 13-year-old kid who looks unbelievable, right? Do we push support towards him? Maybe get him playing in under 18s games and things like that. A bit like you've seen with Celtic with Karamoko Dembele in real life recently.
Yeah, that's the example.
Like that exact thing. I'd love to be able to do that in Football Manager. I think that's where I'd go with it.
Yeah, I think obviously that sounds great, to be honest. I think this idea of, it's not really even something I considered until you've just brought it up. Sort of more of an expansion of the youth elements of it. Maybe, I think they're starting to get that way. How they've revamped the intakes, how it's not just set dates now, I think has made that a little bit more complex than it used to be.
Yeah, definitely.
I think maybe even if you just had like the preview you get every year, it'd be nice if every few months maybe you got, the 2024 preview, 2023 preview, and just sort of got a little bit in the future, and then you can go through and go, that year's looking pretty good, so you can kind of plan your squad around what's potentially coming through, a little bit more like the American sports do, how they'll have baseball's probably the most strong example of that you almost treat your youth teams like the farm system, so you know what's coming through. Not to get too inside baseball, ironically. You know where, I've got a goalkeeper who's coming through in 3 years' time, so I can give my goalkeeper a 4-year contract in the hope that keeper can then take over in the future. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it allows for that sort of identity of the club to be built at an earlier level as well.
Long-term management, I think, is the big... that's something I always think they should push for, is trying to keep... The club vision, I think, has done that quite well this year.
Yeah, I think they've gone towards it a lot more, definitely.
Yeah. I think that's been really positive. But no, I think that's absolutely great, Jake. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think, to be honest, that probably brings us towards the tail end of today's podcast, Jake. It's been great. I've just looked how long we've been going, and my Complete surprise at how long we've been talking. It feels like we've only been talking for 20 minutes. We've got through so much.
Yeah, I know.
We've got through so much.
Yeah, I think that will bring us to the end of this podcast, guys. But thank you so much for watching the Halftime Cuppa Football Manager Podcast. We actually do need a new name for this podcast, don't we? But thank you to my co-host, Charlie Pumfrey. Charlie, where can we find you?
You can find me at PumpfreyStareFM on Twitter, where I'll announce everything else I'm up to.
Lovely. You can find me on Twitter at IJ011_ and on Twitch at IJ011. And a final thank you to our second guest on this podcast, Jake Maxwell, or most of you may know him as Aberrant FC. Where can we find you?
It is at Aberrant FC on all platforms now. It's a lot easier to find me than it was before. So yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
So good. It's been very, very fun. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Next week, we have another incredible guest that I think you guys will absolutely love. Certainly me and Charlie are very looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But cheerio. See you in a bit, lads.
Goodbye.
See ya.